This is Hugh. So I'm going to show you today how to set up a Python library called Lithops, which is for multi-cloud, and Apache OpenWhisk, which is for functions as a service. And you can run Apache OpenWhisk on your laptop, so it's suitable for migrating off the cloud to stop you from getting stuck with vendor lock-in if you develop your cloud functions. So to start, we're going to power up Kubernetes with minikube. So now that minikube is started, let's add the OpenWhisk Helm repository. Okay, so that's already added. Let's update the repository, or let's update Helm. Okay, so now we can start by creating our OpenWhisk cluster. So I'll create this cluster file and add the contents as they are, and you can see that the cluster IP is empty here. So we're just going to set that at runtime. So now we're going to install OpenWhisk and set the minikube IP as the API hostname in that file. So we just put in that command and run. So next we can label the nodes with the invoker role, allowing it to spin up new resources as necessary. Kafka needs to be able to access the network via localhost, so we're going to have to set promiscuous mode to on. And we can keep track of the progress of the deployment using kubectl get all. So you can see that the status is set to 0, meaning it's not ready, and when it is, then it will be a 1. So you can see it's the same here and the same here. So if you want to keep track of that, you can use the watch command. And that'll update every 1 second. And you can just sit in front and watch this if you want. We're going to move ahead. So now set our Docker environment variable to connect to minikube. Next, you want to clone the GitHub repository for making custom OpenWhisk actions. So let's download that. So you can see we have our cluster file and our new repository. Next, build the Python 3.7 action in that repo. So you can see it's calling the Docker build command, labeling it, and it's running this. The contents of this directory is where we can find our Docker file. So let's run that. So now that our action loop base image is created, we can create our modified one for Lithops. So this is going to be the action loop image that we're going to use, but it's going to be our own one with our own libraries. So create a new Docker file and paste in pip3 install Lithops, and the base image is at the top. So now what you want to do is run docker build from the local directory and create a new tag multi-cloud. So that is now running our new Docker file. Now that the new custom Lithops Docker image is created, we can see that in here. So here is our base image and here's our Lithops image. So now let's start with creating our main function as a service. So we create main.py, add in the following. So this is going to connect to our Redis server, which I'll tell you about now in a minute, and save it. So now we're wondering, why is there a Redis server in the main.py? So we're going to see how our deployment is doing. Should be ready by now, hopefully. Okay, Nginx is not started yet. Kafka not started. But you can see that OpenWhisk comes with its own Redis server, so we're going to use that as our document database for object storage. So next we are going to make sure that the whisk command line tool is installed. First, let's clear the terminal. So to install whisk, just run brew install whisk. That's for Mac. Now I already have it installed, so it's not a problem. You might want to install it. Okay, so it's up and running. Now we want to check the status of our deployment. So we can check that here with kubectl. So everything is up and running except for the second controller, so that's fine. We can start now using OpenWhisk. So let's open a service to the outside world for Nginx. This is going to take over the terminal. So we want to remember this second port for HTTPS. So let's go to the other terminal and check the status of the OpenWhisk deployment in Helm, and it will give us this command for our whisk command line to set the property. So we're going to set the whisk API host property and use the port from the output of this service that we opened. So now whisk can communicate with the OpenWhisk service running in the background, and we are going to set the authentication property for the guest user. So this is the same for all OpenWhisk deployments. So now we have our login credentials set in our whisk command line tool. Next, we're going to create a web application of a serverless function using this command, and we're going to label it Hello World using the Docker container that we just built and the main function as a service application that we just created, and we're going to publish it as a public cloud function. And in that cloud function, we're going to call the main method. So now that's created, we can list our whisk actions. So if we want to invoke it via the test endpoint, we can do that. So ask it, action invoke hello world, that's the name of the whisk action. This is telling us to give the output of the cloud function, and then we're passing in the parameter name equals world. So you can see now that is launching. And we can see that we got a response. So if we want to see the logs for that, we can type in activation logs and then put in the activation ID. There's no logs for that, it was successful. So let's do the public endpoint that we've published. So we do get the URL for that action. So this is the public one, it's under the web folder. And then we'll do our curl command with the port number set. So it's this one. So we can call this now that way. There we go. That is a multi-cloud serverless cloud function running on Apache OpenWhisk. Now, what this is doing is it's taking our input parameter in the payload. It is storing a string called body hello, the hello, and then this curly brackets, which we're going to replace later on at runtime. So it persists that to the Redis storage bucket, then it retrieves it from Redis using this key identifier for that object ID, and then it takes the input parameter and substitutes these curly brackets with the input parameter. So in our case, we input world, so it's going to reply with hello and then replace the curly brackets with world, and we get this hello world. So that is it. So I suppose we can do some tidy up, delete our action, and then uninstall OpenWhisk.